The tip for the week is about uneven tension at the beginning at the either selvage, right or left. Some people have it at both, some have it on one side or the other. All of the reasons that for this and how to figure out where you're looser and stuff is in my blog, which you should read in conjunction with this video, because that will make it a little clearer. Yeah, let's say I have a problem where it's my knit rows at the beginning, at the right selvage. And I've determined that it is my knit rows that are large. Well, one of the ways that many of people try to fix this is they start to knit and then they just, on that first row, they just pull that stitch and make it very small. Now, one of the problems with trying that as a fix is that what it does is it pulls yarn from the row below if you pull too hard. So it makes those purl stitches on the previous row look even smaller. And you can see how tiny those stitches are. Okay, so that's not going to really work. The same is true on the reverse side. Now let's say that it's when I begin purl rows on my wrong side, which would be the left selvage when it's on the right, that I do that. It's just going to pull and make those stitches smaller. Now, one thing that you can do is just very methodically try and make those stitches smaller. Now, what I would do if I'm going to pull my yarn to make it tight is I would do it probably after my third stitch or so, and that's going to reduce the size of those stitches. You can practice that a little bit, and that will work on the same side on the other side as well. Now, the other thing that you can do is these are the stitches that are over large. If I insert my needle in there, stretch it out, it's going to make those stitches even larger. So when I am working the stitches in the row that are larger, if I insert my needle very lightly and try and disturb the size of the stitch as little as possible, that will help. Now, another thing that I have found very effective, because I have this problem with certain yarns like Debbie Bliss, Cashmerino, Baby Cashmerino, and Rialto, very high twist yarns. I have this problem at my right and left selvage. Whoops, split that stitch. Is on my rows where I am larger, I wrap the stitch the wrong way, because that tends to make the resulting stitch smaller. I do it for the first couple of stitches. Okay, now we'll see what that means when I get to the return row. And I'm going to the end, going to the end, going to the end. Now, if my problem is on my left side, where I'm doing my purl rows, I would do the same thing. I would go as if to purl, but instead of going over the needle, I'm going to go under the needle, under the needle, under the needle for the first 2 or 3 stitches. Makes those few stitches smaller. Now, what you need to remember if you're doing this is that those stitches are not oriented properly on the needle. This stitch is oriented properly. Notice that this one over here is not. So what I need to do is work that stitch through the back on the next row. And I want to make sure that I just barely use my needle tip. And the same would be true for those purl stitches on the way back. Remember, these stitches down here oriented wrong. Now, another thing that you can do is if a lot of people are concerned about their selvage stitches being ugly and misshapen, if you don't have a tension issue, I wouldn't worry about it, because those will be hidden in a seam or in a picked up edge, and if you're doing something that's not going to be seamed or have a picked up edge, you can use the selvage treatment. But if you are concerned, you can work the selvage stitch, and when you go to work that next stitch, that's when you tighten it up. And that should fix that selvage stitch and leave it a little neater. If you have just the selvage stitch on the needle when you do that, it's going to make it and small and the stitches in the row below. Now, here I'm back on this row, and I'm going to work it through the back, work it through the back, work it through the back. And that will give those stitches a neater appearance.